Hi there, this is again another books video, and maybe you've noticed from the title, but since it's supposed to be books 21, I've decided to change it in books season 2 episode 1, which is sort of ridiculous, but the truth is that the formula of these videos from now on is going to be slightly different. Like, I'm going to try and talk about, let's say, 5 to 10 books tops, and then try and keep them shorter and maybe slightly more vital so that you don't get bored to death in videos that can reach 45 minutes in length. So, extremely quickly, this is a comic. I actually made one of these videos specifically for comics, but I never translated it. I don't have it in English. Anyway, my obsession about Neil Gaiman and his characters is fairly well known, so it's no surprise that I actually read this special story of Superman, which sees death as a co-star. I know nothing about the normal flow of stories when Superman is involved because I'm not a regular reader of his stories. I actually enjoyed the drawing, especially because you get death with a nice little lace umbrella, which is always nice. Where is it? Obviously, it has nothing to do with Buffalo's drawings, but still, it's nice. It stands up on its own, so I liked it, probably even just because death is in it. Now, starting with proper books, I mean, not that this has something shameful about it, it's just different categories. This is Ben Loory, first book, Stories for Nighttime and Some for the Day. Came out in 2011, and it's this whimsical mashup of strange stories. Hi. I adored this book because it's short stories, and you know I love short stories. These short stories are magical because they're told in a style that at first may feel slightly aseptic and sterile, but it's definitely not. The point is that they seem archetypes. Main characters don't have first names. It's just the boy, the girl, the octopus, the sea, the house. Even just by this, you should be dying in anticipation to see which stories could bring these characters together. The division of the stories in those for nighttime and those for daytime actually works. Some of them truly clench your throat in anxiety. It reads extremely fast, which is a pity. I mean, it took me 2 flights and I wish there was more. Some I'm not sure I fully understood, and they feel more like an exercise in style rather than a proper story. But the pace is so quick because it just doesn't get lost in the prose. Like, the woman meets a man, she falls in love and gets married. At times it makes you feel the human condition to be something so fragile, so trivial and common it can be told in just 5 words. And then there are the magical elements of octopi that can choose to live on land and love their collections of spoons. I definitely recommend this one because it's dreamlike. It flows exactly like a dream. Next is none else but the winner of the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction. It's A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. Goon Squad is just a group of violent thugs. I have nothing against the celebration of achievements, no problem with prizes as such. I just don't like it when they become a mark on the cover that I can't remove. I find it slightly invasive, but still, good for you, Jennifer Egan. Cheers for winning the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. You know how I'm a sucker for bizarre editing. I fell for this one because of this. Okay, this is a story about growing up and growing old with a huge curiosity about cultural change and the extremely fast-paced evolution of this world that we're living. There's a huge amount of characters, which to some may be disturbing, but I personally enjoy a lot. Most of these characters are involved in the music industry in some way. The element that to me is extremely promising in seeing this turned into a series is that each and every chapter is extremely different from the others. They're different in style and atmosphere, and they actually feel more like short stories. It didn't mean for the book to come through as disconnected. It just offered me a huge variety of takes on same personalities, maybe the same environments. And actually, it is extremely fun when you can recognize a character from another character's point of view. Like there's a story that's told from the point of view of one character, and he or she talks about someone that you know after a while, you recognize him from the character that you've already met into another story. All this to say recognition of characters, maybe that would have summarized the whole thing quite better. And once again, I have magically stumbled upon a book that is experimental somehow, that is taking the reading to a new level. Every time I find an element that is extremely imaginative in a book, I stop and think whether I would have been able to come up with the same idea. And since the answer is normally no, I try and figure out where the idea came from, where it could have sprouted from. This one actually, regretfully, I might add, rates up pretty high on the list of things that I would have never ever thought of. Probably close to House of Leaves. And if you've heard me talking about House of Leaves, you know what I mean. It's imaginative, but it's real at the same time. It has a new way of expressing ideas. Although, again, there's a huge variety of characters, and you actually may risk getting lost in the lot. It's a take on reality that I could easily relate to, and I could easily let it guide me through the book. You just have to let it take the lead, I think, with this one. This book says, time's a bitch. Some things decay and some things endure. And it has been an amazing read to me. I actually started buying these books for my mum because she's a fan of the series. This is Naked Heat by Richard Castle. First time I saw it, I was at Forbidden Planet. And it's like finding a prop. Somehow. It's like when you find a replica of the One Ring that's extremely effective. That's how it felt to me to see this for the first time. And then you try and jump on page, what was it? 125 for the steamy sex scene? But I think it was Heat Wave, not this one. Anyway, the thing that I like the most about the books from Richard Castle is the metatextual references. Like, you have to keep in mind Richard Castle is taking inspiration from his muse and the people that he actually meets while helping his muse solve crimes. So you cross-reference the series and the books, and it's just hilarious. Come on. I really enjoy them. Like, they're very honest, witty and clever mystery stories. I really, really like them. I think I like this one better than Heatwave. But it may be because it's the last. This one was in my Christmas wish list. It's Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. You may or may not know, I find Steve Jobs a very inspirational figure. But since I know I tend to idolize people, because like everyone else, I need heroes in my imaginative universe, I try and be as objective as I think I can, while reading this. So, well, first I've surprised myself by being extremely ignorant about the man himself. I mean, I didn't even know he was adopted, and I had no idea of the theoretical psychological consequences of this fact in his life. I knew nothing about the dark side of him. So I'm not sure the rendition of these dark sides is faithful to the truth. And it's not one of those things where I can just shut my eyes and say, I don't care how things actually were. I care what they were to me. Truth is just what I want it to be. I wish someone could just tell me who Steve Jobs really was. Because in some way, this book praises him no matter what it says. Even if it promises to be extremely honest about it. So I wonder, what if it tells lies, a few lies, wrapped in perfect truths? This would make them even easier to swallow. I wonder if it's a sugar-rimmed glass. Again, I try to stay detached, but I do think Steve Jobs was a genius. I adored the cover and the fact that it shows the alarming proximity of the past. One thing I really, really didn't like, and I have to come closer for this. Is it just me, or the bridge of his glass is photoshopped? What's the point of this? I'm telling you, it's photoshopped. Why? Oh, why? I wonder if the mission I started reading this book for was actually a rightful one to begin with. Like, if I acknowledge the fact that Steve Jobs, the idea that I have of Steve Jobs is some sort of idol to me. Would it make sense to actually find out the truth about him? Once you admit that your idol is mainly a work of fiction, does it make any sense? Probably not. I think this book does show the man behind the myth. Just make sure you want to see the man behind the myth. And truth be told, some part of this book, no matter what, I found extremely inspiring. I know he's become some sort of controversial figure. To me, he never was just a clever salesman. He really was an inventor with a vision. I admit I may be wrong, but this book didn't prove me I was. I received this one as a gift. And when this happened, I actually asked the person who gave this to me to repeat the name of the author 1,000 times to try and make sure I could pronounce it right. Fail. So I'm just going to show it. It's going to be down here. Anyway, this is We. It was written in 1920s and 21, and it's the archetype of modern dystopia. It's the idea that we owe so much to now of technology that becomes an omnipotent vigilante over a human emotion, thus depriving us of our freedom, of our being human. What is extremely fascinating is that George Orwell himself actually acknowledged the debt that he has to We for, obviously, 1984. I was definitely biased by this element when reading this, but the idea of being not much at the core, but probably at the first roots of the main ideas that brought us great English dystopian novels like Brave New World as well, made me extremely emotional while reading this book. Somehow I think that when stories bring out and contrast so much what is like to stop being humans, what actually emerges at the end are those elements that make us all the same. I think the accent goes exactly there. You immediately realize the things that you miss the most. It's like someone is telling you a very realistic tale about being stranded on a desert island, and you immediately realize that maybe your iPod wouldn't be as important as it is now, were you to be in such a situation. Also, the approach of time into this book is amazing. I absolutely adored it. Now, this is going to sound gratuitous, but anyway, I've recently seen a movie that I've enjoyed up to 2/3, I'd say. It's called Equilibrium, and again, basically it's a dystopian universe. The point is that a compound has been developed, and by injecting it in your neck, I think twice a day, if I'm not mistaken, you get completely separated from your emotions, and so you have this completely apathic human range that is able to perform everything it has to perform, both when it comes to high-profile jobs and social interaction, as long as emotions are not involved. So by giving up happiness and tears, compassion, sympathy, and the lot, you also said goodbye to crimes of passion, theft, homicide. Somehow, when I see contemporary depictions of universes like this, there's always something missing, as if it's extremely artificial and I can tell it's a make-believe. Which to me is something that a work of art has to do very briefly and in a not noticeable way. I normally like to buy into the stories that I read or watch, whatever. What made it possible for We to entangle me completely is that lyricism and poetry is not completely lost just because everyone is encapsulated in a very controlling environment. I think men need to look up at the stars. No matter the reason and no matter what they're trying to see into those stars, they're still going to look up. Again, it's one of those needs of the core of human beings that is not ignored. It is a fearsome idea of evolution, of the world that maybe one day we're going to find out we live in. At the same time, it can be naive because, again, it was 1920. I think a book like this, by telling you the story of characters that surrender their individual selves to a higher power, actually tells you how important it is to understand and cherish the fact that each and every one of us is a single human being. Each and every one of us is different, but at the same time, there are elements of our nature that we share, and we're always going to share them no matter what. Paying the debt to 1984 in a slightly different way is IQ84. This too was in my Christmas wish list. These are the whole 3 parts of it. First 2 I think came out in 2010 and the last year. Well, apparently there's a 4th part coming on. I finished this yesterday and probably it's too soon to talk about this book. Still, first impression since turning the last page, I found this tale fascinating. It's set in the 80s, and this is probably why it has this melancholy feel to me. I'm under the impression that I can picture this time set perfectly. Probably it's not true because, I mean, Japan in the 80s, I've never seen it, if not in cartoons when I was a child. But still, it resonates in me, and I have to undergo no major effort to picture it in my mind. I can relate with the characters, both age-wise and to some extent, not talking about the main lady, when it comes to ambitions in life. I think there is one thing that cuts Murakami away, from everyone else. It's the fact that, again, this is, as usual, my personal opinion, his dialogues to me feel extremely real. I can easily imagine eavesdropping on someone talking like that. I don't know if you ever stop and think about the voices that your characters may have. Since I tend to read out loud quite often, I tend to imagine the tone of voice that my characters, well, their characters could have. This is ridiculous. I've opened the book at random at page 649. Just trust me, I opened it at random. And it says, "You have a nice voice too. It's deep and full of emotion. Very nice for reading aloud." Also, once again, there's sort of a multi-dimensional mess. And I'm not going to talk extensively about this because I don't want to spoil anything. But as usual, I fell completely in love with the way he has of introducing supernatural elements into stories that are so blatantly obvious and drenched in daily routine. I don't think that the hype about this book was out of proportion. I would read his scribbles on the math textbook, I know, but I think this is a major work. I think this book is full of extremely precious levels, messages about what our society is about, and at the same time is magical and entertaining, and it bleeds into your real life. So to sum it all up, yes, it is a long story, but I think you're gonna love every single word of it. I'm so not used to being done so quickly. Anyway, I hope you like this sort of new format. Since I'm doing it, it's clear that I personally find it a good idea. Let me know what you think about this, and I'll talk to you really, really soon. Bye.